I'm super excited today to welcome Hailey. Hailey is our May LUV ambassador, and she's based in Phoenix, Arizona, and works in the digital marketing space. We first connected via Instagram, which I feel like is a story for a lot of our ambassadors. We pick up conversations on Instagram, and then before we know it, we're talking on the phone, and then we decide that we need to sit down and have an interview to share your story. So Hailey, we're super excited to have you. And as always, we're going to launch straight into an icebreaker question. And yours is specific because you just celebrated a birthday. So in honor of your birthday, what is your go-to sweet treat that you love?
This is hard. Have you had crumble cookies? Because I feel like that's always my go-to for just any fun celebration and or occasion. So I've eaten way too many crumble cookies in the last like 3 days, but they're delicious.
That sounds so good. Are you like a birthday cake person? I know there's some people who don't like cake.
I am not really a birthday cake person. I like cheesecake, but yeah, I much prefer like cookies or brownies or something other sweet. Yeah, I don't really love frosting sometimes, so that always ruins like cakes for me, I feel like.
Yeah, I feel like frosting is 90% of the cake normally.
Yeah. Yeah, and like cupcakes, there's way too much frosting on them. So, yeah, but crumble cookies are delicious. If you haven't heard of them, they're like big gourmet type cookies and they have a rotating menu. And so they have different cookie flavors all the time. So this week was Reese's chip, I think, in like a chocolate cookie. It was amazing. So good.
Sounds so good. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is already off to a fantastic start.
I know my mouth is watering thinking about the ones I still have hiding in the microwave so my dog doesn't get them.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I always like to start in this way to, sometimes when we start to launch into our skin cancer story, it's hard to talk about. So I feel like talking about things like cookies and brownies and cheesecake is always a great way to launch into it. You
Yeah.
know, and allow the audience to know you for something else as well and relate to you on a very personal level. So now that we have our sweet treats kind of in the back of our mind, let's kind of launch into your story. And again, anything that you feel comfortable sharing, and we'll dive into different aspects of it, throughout the interview. But you know, talk us through, your skin cancer story when you were first diagnosed. Anything you feel comfortable sharing with us.
Sure. So I'm an open book. I'll share anything and everything. I also have a blog that has like all sorts of details on everything. It's called haveasenseoftumor.com, which just kind of, I don't know, accurately reflects my personality, I feel like, and approach to everything. But as far as diagnosis is concerned, I kind of feel like I had two different diagnoses. So when I was 24 years old, I found a mole on the back of my shoulder that I had biopsied only because my mom forced me to go to the dermatologist. My mom was recently a breast cancer survivor, so I think she was very hyper aware of things that could be wrong or looked a little fishy. So she forced me to go to the dermatologist. I went there and they said, yeah, it looks a little weird. You've had it your whole life, but we can take it off if you want it. I want us to take it off. And I was like, if I go home with this still on my shoulder, like my mom will kill me. So please take it off. Like we just have to test it. So they did, called me a couple weeks later, and everyone was really surprised that it came back positive for melanoma. So at the time, I did a huge surgery. So I had a wide excision surgery, tested my lymph nodes, those came back negative. The tissue that they took out from my surgery came back negative, and everything was fine. And I was just kind of in a surveillance mode. And to be honest, I didn't really think that much of it at the time. I think I fell into the it's just skin cancer group of people. And I think that's largely influenced by everything that my mom went through. So, she had breast cancer, she went through chemotherapy, she did all of these other things. And then I compared mine and I'm like, you can't even really call it cancer. Like I had it removed and that was it. Like there was nothing really to it. So I think I downplayed it for a while. I still, oh, you're going to see them over here in the background.
You're always welcome.
I know that's a big guy. So yeah, I didn't really take it. It's not that I didn't take it seriously. I obviously started doing some protection and doing all of those things that were important, but I just thought that that was a piece of me now, and that's just kind of what it was. And then 5 years, almost to the day, actually, I had a 6-month appointment with my oncologist, just a normal like check-in appointment. And I told her I had had this tiny lump near my groin area, like underneath the skin. So I'm like, while I'm here, I just want you to take a look at it and make sure that you're not worried about it. And she flipped out immediately. And she was one to kind of overreact and over test anyway. So I didn't really take it that seriously. But she's like, we're going to order a PET scan. We've never had one. So this will be a really great time for us to kind of establish a baseline and make sure that everything else is okay. So I'm like, all right, fine. So I thought it was the most expensive inconvenience ever. I'm like, this is ridiculous. It's costing me like $2,000 just to be sure that this stupid lump is nothing. And this is ridiculous. And it turned out my melanoma had secretly metastasized. So I found out I had melanoma in my heart, lungs. I ended up having a spot in my brain, my shoulder, different leg spots. I think there were like 10 or 11 different tumors, maybe. And that's really like what I consider, like, I guess, my main diagnosis, just because at that point, I really was a cancer patient. I went through all of the cancer things at that point, and it really wasn't, I guess, just skin cancer anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I guess, part of when you had your first experience at 24, I hear this story a lot where it's normally someone else telling you
Yep.
you should go get that checked out. And especially when it's on your back as well, like you don't
Yeah.
see it, like you're not able to see if it's changing and growing. So it
Right.
really does take like a family member, a loved one to be like, okay, something looks off.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I remember we were in the pool and it was always an ugly mole, but I had had it my entire life. And so, yeah, we were swimming and she's like, that's it. We're making up an appointment together right now. Like, we're doing this. You're going to get it taken off.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're glad your mom did that. I'm sure in the moment you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh. And then so thankful.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, totally.
So, you had that first diagnosis at 24, and then 5 years later, you went through the full cancer treatment with the second. How were you kind of like feeling? Like, I know when people get these
Yeah.
diagnoses, they feel confused and alarmed and they're not sure what to do. Can you walk us through like what was going through your head?
Yeah, I'll talk through the most recent one because I just because that one is, I guess, easier for me to pull experiences from. But that one was definitely a very scary moment for me. So the first time I don't think I really felt that scared, just because it seemed like such an easy solution. Like, there's something on the surface of your skin and we take it off and it's not there anymore, and that's sort of the end of it. This time I had stuff inside my body and no symptoms. So like I didn't have a cough, or I didn't have headaches, or I didn't have the classic like metastatic symptoms. And I think that was really confusing to me, how I was operating relatively fine. I was in probably some of the best shape of my life. I had been exercising, spinning, I was training to run my first 5K. Like, I was doing all these things that felt really great. And then secretly there was this really terrible thing inside of me. So I think that was very I don't know, it was just difficult to process. And then I think also knowing the statistics that come with a stage 4 melanoma diagnosis is not they're not great, especially with when it metastasizes to the brain. They're really not great. And so I think that was really scary, to try to remain hopeful knowing that a lot of those stats are out of date and they don't reflect younger people, and they don't reflect today's modern treatment and all of that stuff, while also like preparing yourself for what might be the inevitable.
Right. I mean, and that's a lot of emotions for you to have to deal with on your own. And, what we talk about at LUV all the time is support, support, support.
Yeah.
Like, let's connect you with people who get it. So, who did
Yeah.
you really turn to support in these moments?
Yeah, so my family was huge. I remember I remember we left one of the very first appointments when I had found out I had cancer, when it had spread to my brain. And I remember my dad said to me in the parking lot, like, kiddo, this is stuff that we should be talking about me and years from now. Like, we shouldn't even be having to deal with this. But they were wonderful and absolutely fantastic. Like, my dad went to every single appointment with me. To this day, he goes to every appointment with me, and he's wonderful to have as an advocate, which I think is probably one of my biggest recommendations. And I feel so sorry for people who've been diagnosed during COVID and don't have that opportunity, because it's so difficult to process everything on your own. And you're already going through so much, that to be also like asking questions and making sure that you're understanding everything is so challenging. So to be able to have a support or an advocate or someone to go with you and be your second set of eyes and ears is absolutely wonderful.
It's huge. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure. When we first spoke as well over the phone, we talked about a little bit of this, an overview.
Yeah.
And then you talked a lot about your desire to give back. You're like, okay, I feel like I need to do something now. I need to like say something. I need to give back
Yeah.
to the community. And there are so many people in our community who feel the exact same way. So, kind of what have you done to get involved in things that are tangible, things that our community can take away and do as well?
Yeah, I feel like, I guess right now, and it changes probably like month by month, maybe depending on how I'm feeling. But right now, I have a couple of like key pillars of things that I like to talk about and sort of bring awareness to. I think there's a lot of people that are talking about prevention, and I think that's a very easy thing to talk about, it makes sense. But unfortunately, for some of us, like I can't go back and put sunscreen on, or go back and not go into a tanning bed, or whatever those things are. So now what can I do going forward? And then I think that there lacks a lot of education around metastatic melanoma specifically. I think everyone knows that it can be skin cancer. They know that it's dangerous if it's not caught early, but I don't think there's enough education around like the chances of it metastasizing and what that looks like. So that is a big piece of kind of what I like to talk about, is just like my experience and how that sort of all unfolded for me. The other piece is interesting is I'm really into like the mental health and trauma side of things. So it's very traumatic being a 30-year-old and being diagnosed with, I mean, really a terminal illness. And you sort of feel very alienated by a lot of your friend groups. Like everyone is getting married or doing really exciting things in their career, or buying homes, or starting families, or doing all these like normal things. And I'm talking about like, do you have a living will at my dinner table? Like they're just very different conversations. And so that I think is a big piece for me too, is to educate that like there is a community of us out there, and we do understand each other. And um, I don't know, it's a very different life stage, I feel like.
I mean, absolutely. And, thank you for talking about that so candidly,
Yeah.
honestly, because there are people who know exactly what you're saying. And even though in your friend group and like, you were scrolling through Facebook and all you were seeing were babies and people getting
Yeah.
married. And I completely understand that.
Yeah, and then you're like, am I gonna have infertility issues because of all the drugs being injected in my body? Like it's just it's so different. It's crazy. It forces you to grow up like a million years. And then you're in a cancer center with a bunch of older folks that people are like, assume I'm there for my dad or my mom. I'm like, no, no, I'm the one with the cancer, not these guys.
And I think that's something that we're trying so hard, especially here at
Yeah.
LUV, is that this is not an older person's problem. Like,
Right.
this is something that's probably in your body at a younger age. We're just now catching it sooner.
Yep, definitely. And I think I don't know about you. I never stepped foot in a tanning bed actually, but I was a swimmer growing up. So and I lived in Arizona, so I swam all the time, and was a competitive swimmer. So sun exposure was definitely had a lot of it. But I think our generation is the tanning bed generation too. I remember in high school and college, like everyone going to tanning beds and doing all of that too. So it's going to be interesting to see how that really impacts everyone 10 and 15 years later, because I think it takes a while to progress, but there's definitely going to be an impact for all of that too.
I know it's crazy. I was actually talking to another skin cancer advocate a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about tanning beds. And I was telling her that that was the thing before girls went to prom. They all went to
Uh-huh.
tanning beds. Like that was like the thing.
Yep.
And it's so crazy to think about because I mean now we know I feel like it's like the smoking, right?
Yeah.
People didn't know it was bad for them. And I feel like tanning beds was the same thing. Okay, well now the information's out there. Stop. Stop
Right.
it.
Yep, exactly, I totally agree.
Yeah, so kind of going off of, you talked a little bit about misinformation, and we know that misinformation is so prevalent when it comes to skin cancer and quite
Yeah,
honestly, other forms of cancer too. It's so sad
sure.
the kind of misinformation that spreads. And what I like to ask every single ambassador is what is one myth about skin cancer or skin cancer awareness that you want to debunk that you hear all the time and you're like, oh my gosh, this is just wildly inaccurate.
Oh man. I feel like the easy one is that it's not just skin cancer. I feel like you probably get that a lot, and I'm sure a lot of patients and advocates say that too. Um, For me, I would probably say just the mental trauma side of things, it should not be ignored. I think people are always so focused, and physicians too, like survivorship is so difficult, I think. And I think everyone sort of underestimates that and thinks that you go through this thing, you go through treatment, and then you're done, and now you can celebrate it and you go back to normal life. And that is not at all how it works. And so I think that is definitely something that you should be aware of, that it's a very long journey. It's not just kind of getting, like I said, getting some treatment and then ending it.
Yeah. I that's so important. I mean, it doesn't end once you get that clean bill
Right.
of health. I
Right.
mean, that's why our motto, Outshine Skin Cancer, that's why we decided that that was going to be our motto, because your life and your priorities shift dramatically, right? So like it's so hard to have a diagnosis and then feel like your life is, like you said, you're like, oh my gosh, like these other pieces that are impacted. And what we want to try and do in the core of our mission is like, you can keep living your life. We're just going to give you the tools to do it safely and feel like mentally you're protected and you feel safe.
Yep, exactly. I describe it as sort of like a pie chart. So when you're diagnosed, cancer takes over everything, and you don't really have any control of your schedule or your side effects or how you're going to respond. Like everything is sort of up in the air, and really cancer becomes your entire pie chart, and you have to figure out how to move everything else to the side. And then once you, at least for me, like once I finished treatment, cancer is still very much a very large piece of me. I still have surveillance scans, and I still think about it all the time, and I'm still dealing with all of the mental trauma and all of these things, but it's not my whole life anymore. And so finding its way to still give it an appropriate sized piece of pie, is kind of the exercise that I'm going through and will probably always be going through. But it's exactly what you're saying, is like, where can I find tools to make that pie as small as possible so that I can still do all the other things that I love to do and that make me who I am, but give it its space.
I love that. I think that's such a great way to explain that. And I've never heard that before. And we're definitely quoting you on that.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, so anything else? I mean, skin tips, anything else the audience should know about taking control of their skin health?
I
It's
mean,
a loaded
sunscreen.
question, I know.
I know, sunscreen, 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 I guess. And I think probably just the awareness that it can happen to you. I also think that's probably a side effect of our generation too, is that we're like, meh, if that won't happen to me, like I'm sort of, I don't know, I'm invincible and that won't happen. And it definitely can. I think statistics are showing that it can, and it probably will. So figure out a way to be safe, I think. Yeah, I never thought I would be that person that wears long sleeves and pants in Arizona summer when it's 117 outside, but I am now because that's just my life. So
And we're working to give you the most breathable options possible so that you aren't dying in that Arizona heat.
I know it's a challenge to find stuff that also doesn't look like it belongs on an 80-year-old, but I know that's why I was so excited to find you guys.
Yeah, that's exactly our mission is, when I was going through my experience, I was 21 and I was like,
Yeah.
I am way too young to be wearing some of these options. Like, please
Yeah.
don't make me choose between looking cute with my friends and my skin health.
Yes, exactly. It shouldn't be a choice.
It should not be a choice. Yeah, it should not. Oh my gosh. Well, Hailey, thank you so much for this conversation and being open and honest, and sharing with us. Like I said, when we first connected, people in this community can relate. They understand. They get it.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part about finding different sort of communities to connect with, is when I was first diagnosed, that's all I wanted. Was I wanted to find someone like me that was going through a similar experience, because I wanted that hope and I wanted to know that I wasn't the only one in the world that was going through this. And so if I can be that person for other people, I think that that's wonderful, because like that, I know that's what I wanted, and I know there are other people out there like me, and we exist, and we have this like club that no one ever really wanted to be a part of, but we're here and we make the best of it.
Yeah. Club no one ever wanted to really be a part of.
Yep.
That's a perfect way to explain it. Well, Hailey, thank you so much. And the audience, after they watch this interview, they're going to have other ways to connect with you. We're going to highlight this on social media. So if people want to talk to you and want to share their story, they're going to be able to.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Haley, for your time. And we're super excited to have you as our May LUV ambassador.
Me too. Thank you.